Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's your day going?
Wonderful. Excited to talk football, even though we don't have football to go cover this weekend.
Yeah, no, there is no football to cover, but there is still things happening.
There are always things happening. That's true.
And the thing this week is the NCAA saying, yeah, maybe we need to move forward on this likeness thing before we get put out of business.
In a shocking twist, the NCAA, which has spent the last 100 years saying that the student athletes being able to profit in any way from their experience would just simply be the end of the world. When it turns out that when the NCAA's existence is potentially in danger, that it turns out actually we were mistaken. And that would actually, instead of being the end of the world, be just completely fine. So let's do that instead.
Gosh, it's almost like, how do we know to believe you?
I think we know.
So that'll be coming down. I know Gene Smith was at Ohio State maybe a month ago at this point, saying they were going to be talking about this and they wanted to move forward. And he felt that there was room in this realm to make good for the players. And we see both Gene Smith involved and OSU president Michael Drake involved in this, committee, action group, whatever, this NCAA group, if you will, to devise or to decide that, you guys need to figure this out, or we need to figure this out. So they're going to start doing that. And it's, it'll change some things, but the foundation is still there, and football will still be played, and basketball will still be played. This will not kill college sports, probably. I don't think it will, but I don't want to be like, it's not going to kill college sports. I'll let you do that, Tom.
This isn't going to kill college sports. Guess what? People will still want to go see the games, and I know that there's like this small percentage of people that just can't get over the idea but the purity of the amateurism and
yes.
All right, sorry. Legitimately there are people that will tell you that they will stop watching games if players are able to benefit from their name, image, and likeness, which is like, okay, what would you like to do with your Saturdays instead? Oh, no, let's watch the NFL instead. Like, okay, cool. Have fun with that.
Yeah.
It's just, look around you, friends. Like, this is not the same college football that it was in the 1950s. Like, this is turned into a massive multi-billion-dollar industry where individual college football playoffs are, the NCAA is making like $500 million a year off the TV deal just from the college football playoff. I'm sorry to tell you, but the days of the 1950s and the purity of amateurism is, that's long gone. And if you want to really take a good hard look at the 1950s, it wasn't that great back then either for other reasons.
Well, and in the last show earlier in the week, we were talking about the need for Heisman campaigns back in the 90s. And back in the 80s and 90s and before then, teams could only be on national television a certain number of times per year. Like when I was in college, the limit was 5. And the rest of the games would be shown like local television. Mm-hmm. Channel 10 would have it in Columbus. But don't you think things have gotten better by all of the games being on national television? Like, you get to see every game you want. Before, do you remember like the pay-per-view packages? You would have to buy like $149 to be able to watch all of ESPN's games like around the country.
Yep.
Now you just pay $200 for cable. All right, whatever. Mm-hmm. But it's a month. It's not a week, But things have improved. That improved things. I'm sure, coaches and there were people concerned about this is going to change everything if you're on TV every week. And it has changed some things. And we're looking at some, the Shoemaker complex right now at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. And yeah, there are a lot of nice buildings paid for by all of these games on TV. And these are good changes.
Well, yeah, in terms of the fan experience, like, you're able to watch a whole lot more games than you used to be able to. And, growing up, we didn't have cable. So it was like, okay, there was the CBS, there was NBC, and there was ABC. And, CBS had whichever games they had, and ABC had, whichever game they had. And NBC had Notre Dame, and that was it. And for me, if Ohio State was on ESPN, I had to have my neighbor who had cable record it on their VCR and ignore college football for the day, and then get the VCR tape and then watch it. And
that's the good old days, Tom.
It was extremely pure. And amateurish, and it was great.
You were the amateur.
I was the amateur, yes. And then TLDR, as soon as I moved out and went to Ohio State, my parents got cable that fall.
Finally, the boy is gone. We can get cable.
I don't want to say it was purely spite, but it was mostly spite, I think.
It reminds me of like when Damon Arnett gets, like, some fans get upset that he talks a lot. So I tweeted a few weeks back, like, fans get upset about that, but long for the days of Jack Tatum, like, trying to kill people on the football field, like back when football was classy.
Yes.
Like actually trying to harm people. And, they love that and long for that. But, two guys talking, it's they start to faint. But, this will take some getting used to maybe for you, but who knows? You might like the fact that Chase Young is selling you a Jeep, and you might go buy that Jeep.
I don't want to spoil anything, but it's not going to materially impact anything on college on game days. I mean, there may be some marginal small amount of money that's going directly to the school and more that's going directly to some small number of players, but this is not going to be the end of the world. And the NCAA has now admitted, maybe this isn't going to be the end of the world after all. Sorry to have gotten y'all whipped up over this for the last 30 years, but turns out, no, this will probably be fine.
The NCAA's eureka moment. We fixed it. We figured it out. So yeah, we can look forward to that, and I'm sure we'll talk about that many, many times over the next 7 to 12 years.
Speaking of things that are fixed, Michigan football.
Thank you, Tom. That is perfect, because they hosted Notre Dame, and they beat the snot out of Notre Dame 45-14. This is the 8th-ranked Notre Dame. That means they were the 8th best team in the nation.
Mm.
But you know who is better than 8th ranked?
16th ranked? Is that how rankings work?
19th
ranked.
Michigan proved that, yes, they are back. Yes, they are a top 7 team. Unless Notre Dame has moved further back from their rankings.
Unless Notre Dame was overrated. And when does that ever happen?
Tom, I don't like your tone. Because Michigan was the better team. And here, I wrote about this in Michigan Monday, Tom. I don't know if any of you saw this game. Like, when the camera would go up to the lights and you would just see the rain just pouring down. And it looks like all of like the football movies from the 90s where you're playing in the worst weather possible, and it's like they don't even have lights in the stadium, and it's just dark and muddy and raining, and you can't see anything. And Brian Kelly was like, what we ought to do? Let's sling this rock all over the place. Because you know who we got at quarterback? Ian freaking Book. And you know what? He's an average quarterback.
Maybe.
And he was 8 of 25 for like 100 yards. They would just throw it up for grabs. It was as terrible a game plan as I've seen. It would go back to like the James Franklin Penn State, I think it was 2016 against Michigan, when they got to be like 49-0 or 49-7, just destroyed. And just completely terrible game plan for what were conditions that, especially initially, were bad. And Tom, that didn't surprise me. Well, Brian Kelly being an idiot didn't surprise me.
Well, he did that exact same thing against North Carolina State a couple of years ago in the remnants of, some hurricane, and it was like, you know what we should do? Let's have Deshaun Kaiser slinging around. Like, that's...
He's probably thinking, I used to do this all the time in Central Michigan. It works.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's stipulate that it was stupid.
Yes.
They didn't have a ton of other great options because they were running the ball for about 1.5 yards per carry. I think they ended up with like 1.5 yards per carry. And the average gain per pass attempt was like, I think just shy of 3. So it was like, well, there aren't a lot of real great options here.
And I'll give you that. They could not run the ball, but they were just so adamant about throwing it. But yeah, there was they had no options, which makes things even worse. But what surprised me most is how well Michigan ran the ball.
Mm-hmm.
This was like the Michigan offense that people thought, like the offensive line that people thought was going to be there. They mauled Notre Dame, which it's fine, but it makes me think much less of Notre Dame because I've seen how this Michigan offense operates against most teams, and it's not great. And so when it does look great, at least the running game, I'm not going to think, oh my gosh, this running game. I'm going to think, holy crap, this run defense is an issue. And so, yeah, they were Hassan Haskins, the redshirt freshman running back who used to be a linebacker, who used to be a running back, is getting better. He rushed for like 150 yards in this one, but, a week ago was held to like 28 yards on 13 carries by Penn State.
Yes.
Zach Charbonnet rushed for like 75, 80 yards, and he's fine as well. He's good. I think he's going to continue to get better. Both of those guys will continue to get better and should have interesting careers. But my major takeaway from this game was Jim Harbaugh had to do everything in his power to protect his offense and his team from Shea Patterson.
It was interesting because I thought, well, first of all, Shea Patterson had an extremely Shea Patterson moment where it was at some point in the third quarter, I think, they were down kind of by their own goal line. Yes. And it was maybe a second and down or third down, and there's some pressure, and he just kind of heaved out this lateral that was like, when you throw it backwards, they can just pick it up, and it's right by the end zone. And it happened to go out of bounds,
and it was left-handed.
And it was, of all the hands he could throw it with, that's one of his two best choices, I would say.
And it was one of those things. Even I was driving home from the game, so I was listening to Brandstetter and Deerdorf, the Michigan play-by-play guys, on the radio, and they were just all they could really manage was, Shea, why? Why, Shea? Why? But he gives you 2 or 3 of those every game, and you knew something was going to happen with these conditions. He fumbled 3 times, which is to be expected because it was wet. But then he was also, he threw 2 touchdowns, was throwing late, like not late over the middle, like late in the game when the game was over, but pretty much because Jim Harbaugh, the old Jim Harbaugh, appeared for, like, out of nowhere. That's Jim Harbaugh's music. Mm-hmm. And he was a jerk again, kind of a jerk, and was throwing the ball late, even with Dylan McCaffrey in there. And that's something a lot of people have been wanting to see from Jim Harbaugh. Like, we're tired of the Jim Harbaugh lost in the lights. Let's see the Jim Harbaugh who is just doesn't care if people hate him. In fact, kind of revels in it. And I think we saw some of that. I don't know if we're going to continue to see that, where it's the what's your deal, Jim Harbaugh from 2009, him and Pete Carroll getting into it a little bit. But he appears to have some feistiness returning, and maybe it all started with that he's looking for a way out to the NFL. Or maybe this is his audition.
Michigan fans are going to love that. Michigan's good, and it's only because Jim Harbaugh wants to get out.
Write it, Tom. You have to write that one.
I think you already did.
Oh, shoot.
It was interesting because it seemed like there was a little more of that Jim Harbaugh influence in that offense on Saturday, which is probably partly a function of Jim Harbaugh offense is more what you would run when yes. you are getting when you're partway through an Old Testament style flood. So that's probably part of it. But the way that they have played the last 6 quarters, and you can say, well, it's Penn State was basically turtling in the second half of that game, and Notre Dame essentially didn't show up for their game, but they have been noticeably different in the last 6 quarters than they were basically up to halftime of that Penn State game. So maybe they've found something. Maybe they're going back to, what is their identity and has been their identity as a school. And that was one thing that was sort of notable to me. The other thing was much like Ohio State, how Ohio State's offense was much more effective last year towards the end of the year when Dwayne Haskins was all of a sudden willing to run the ball a little bit more, and that gave you a whole different threat. And that was like the Maryland game on. The offense just looked different because all of a sudden Dwayne Haskins was willing to keep it and run with the ball, and that opened up a whole bunch of other stuff. Shea Patterson being willing to keep it a few times opens up a whole bunch of different stuff because he didn't have a ton of rushing yards, but there were he picked up some big first downs, and there were plays where it was like one more block and he could have turned that into something really significant. They have to have that. They have to have that, and they have to throw the ball to Nico Collins more. It seems like Nico Collins. There were a couple. I think they got a pass interference on one and had a touchdown on another. I think to Nico Collins. Like they should be throwing the ball up to him at least twice a quarter and just go up and see what happens. Because when they throw to him, just throw it up downfield, and good things tend to happen more often than not when they do that. But they just haven't done that a lot.
Yeah, they maybe 3 targets a game at times for him, and it should be more. So Michigan they're at Maryland this week, 21-point favorites. I don't expect Maryland to pose much of an issue. I probably wouldn't have said that, 7 weeks ago when Maryland used to be good, those first 2 games, and when they were scoring 70 points a game. What was I supposed to think?
You were supposed to think exactly what the opposing coach of that first team thought. If you don't remember, Maryland won their first game 79-0 against Howard, which was coached by former K-State legend Ron Prince. And Ron Prince, it came out later, Ron Prince sort of implied or accused his team of perhaps shaving points in that game and suggested he might call the FBI to investigate them because that's how badly they played. So, here's
the thing,
that's not great. In terms of team morale, that's probably not great.
No, but was the line like 77 that you needed to shave that many?
It was, I don't know what the line was. I can't imagine it was more than 30 or so, but maybe they just wanted to be real thorough.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and then Michigan will have a bye, and then they'll host Michigan State. I don't expect Michigan State to put up a fight. But, they'll put up a fight. I just feel like they're kind of done. I don't have much faith in the Spartans.
The way those Michigan State-Michigan games go is Michigan State goes right down the field and scores a touchdown on the first drive because they have saved something from Michigan all year, and then Michigan kind of takes control, and then if it turns into a monsoon, then Michigan State can hang around and maybe steal a win, and if not, then Michigan will win, 24-7, and Michigan State has not scored any points for the last 58 minutes of the game.
And then after that, it's Michigan at Indiana, which I think could be pretty interesting. If you get Michael Penix there moving around, you get some tempo going, you kind of trap some of the defenders on the field. Indiana has had some success here and there against Don Brown in the past. That one, Indiana could be playing for, they're both teams are 6-2 right now. And Indiana could be playing for something pretty significant at that point. And that's going to be maybe like the biggest game in Hoosier football, in 30 years.
It's up there. They're 6-2 right now. They've got Northwestern at home this weekend, so they should win that. Then they get a bye week. Then you finish at Penn State versus Michigan at Purdue. You're probably not winning at Penn State.
Right.
That's probably not going to happen. But if they are 7-3 going into that Michigan game, the Michigan and Indiana, this is another game that's just very predictable every year. Indiana will hang around for 3.5 quarters against Michigan, and everyone kind of goes, maybe, and then they find a way to blow it.
And we're usually watching it in some press box.
Or watching in press box or driving somewhere.
Yes.
I remember listening to one a year or two ago, driving to Iowa or something. It's just very predictable. I just remember, I think this was a game that made Bill Lynch throw his gum at one point, if they recovered an onside kick or didn't recover an onside kick or something. It's just, they're always almost there. And so maybe this is the year that, Charlie Brown gets to kick the football.
Jim Harbaugh pulls the football away. Yeah, we'll see. I'm looking forward to that one. And then, of course, after that, it is Ohio State, Michigan, 12 p.m. on Fox. This is not a great week of football, Tom. They say there's a lot of, 8 of the top 10 teams or whatever are off or something like that. I don't really care because I'm off this weekend. So I'm going to watch whatever is on. And it'll start with that Maryland-Michigan game. But, I'll even watch. You know what? I'll even watch Nebraska Purdue. I don't care. It's not going to be it's not quite the game we thought it would be. Say week 0.
But it's not quite the game we thought it would be before we saw these teams play and went, oh no, that's awful. No.
Nebraska is a 3-point favorite in that one at Purdue. Oh my gosh, that's the Fox game.
It's not great.
That's the little noon Fox. That's not a big noon game.
We were looking the last bye week for Ohio State. My family went to the Ohio University game. We thought, oh, that'd be fun. Go see a game there. We were looking this week like, oh, would be a fun place to go see a game, and it was like, I mean, Tennessee's playing UAB and Clemson's playing Wofford, and it's like, if Clemson was playing some kind of an ACC, like if it was Clemson, North Carolina State, like yeah, I could probably talk myself into like I would love to see a game in Death Valley sometime. But no thanks. No,
but it is Georgia, Florida this week, which is kind of a playoff game, Tom. The loser is out. The winner is not in, but still in. So this is Georgia is favored by 6.5. It still feels like Georgia's just getting the benefit of every doubt here, and part of that is maybe like Florida's struggles over the years, but for some reason I almost feel better. I feel better about Florida than I do Georgia right now, and that makes me think I'm way off.
Florida has played a better schedule than Georgia has right now. I mean, Florida at least has beaten Auburn, which Auburn is, fine. Like and Florida has played LSU and looked competent against LSU and hung with LSU for 2.5 quarters, 3 quarters, something like that. Georgia, like, if you really want to go through Georgia's schedule, like, who have they actually played? Like, they have
Notre Dame.
They've played Notre Dame, which that one's not holding up nearly as well as it has. I wrote a feature this week just called "Scouting the SEC" and went through all of the teams in the SEC just because you're constantly told these teams play this murderous schedule and it's so difficult, and so you have to give them the benefit of the doubt because I mean they've played this difficult schedule. Georgia's best win, going by S&P Plus this year, is Notre Dame, which is ranked 25th. So your best win so far, as you're 6-1, it's going into November in the toughest conference in America, and your best win is against Notre Dame, which is 25th. Your second best win, who is Georgia's second best win right now by S&P Plus?
Oh,
I guess
I will say Kentucky.
Tennessee, 46th, Kentucky, 54th. You have 2 top 50 wins right now, 7 games into the season. You've lost to South Carolina. South Carolina is ranked below Cincinnati right now. If you want to, I went and did a comparable schedule just to put Ohio State's wins in the context of an SEC team, like the actual quality of this year's SEC team, not just like, oh, look at the logo on the helmet, they must be good. Georgia, if you put it in the context of a Big Ten team, won at Rutgers 30-6, beat an FCS team 63-17, beat Northwestern 55-0, beat Indiana 23-17, won at Nebraska 43-14, lost to Cincinnati 20-17, beat Purdue 21-0. If you had a Big Ten team who did that, what would the context of their around the conversation about their playoff chances be?
Yep, and there would be they haven't played anybody. The schedule is weak. Who is your best win? And look at your loss. And it's amazing how much extra credit I guess you get for just having that label of SEC when, without looking, you just assume, like, yes, it carries more weight because people say it does.
Right.
And then when you break down the numbers and you actually look at who's played who and who's won and the strengths of schedule and all of that, it's like, well, you wish more people knew that it's just sometimes it's just an average brand of football being played everywhere.
Yeah.
It's not just a superior thing. And it may be the best conference, but if you're not playing the best teams in that conference, then it doesn't mean anything.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Alabama is another one that gets credit. Well, I mean, they're playing in the SEC West, and it's the toughest division in football. I mean, S&P Plus this year, the SEC West and the Big Ten East are basically indistinguishable. It's like a 1/100th of a point or something like that. It's essentially the same. Alabama, just the teams they've beaten. If you put them in the Big Ten context, ready? Illinois, Rutgers, Cincinnati, Northwestern, Purdue, Iowa, Nebraska, Rutgers. I mean, it's just there's no there.
Right.
They are 88th in strength of schedule this year, and on the Michigan Notre Dame broadcast, when they were talking about the playoff teams, Chris Fowler said he would put Ohio State number 1 in the polls, but, quote, you can question their schedule as people do.
And you throw that out there, and then it carries more weight. It becomes something.
Right. It's just, well, you can question their schedule as people do. Okay, here's Ohio State's SEC equivalent. Just teams that other top SEC opponents have had, or teams this year have played. Beat Utah State 45-21. Beat South Carolina 42-0. Won at Texas A&M 51-10. Beat Vanderbilt 76-5. Won at Mississippi State 48-7. Beat Texas, like the Texas Longhorns, 34-10. Won at Duke 52-3. Beat Auburn 38-7.
Yeah.
And those are teams that are ranked below, because I didn't bump Ohio State up because Wisconsin is right between Georgia and Auburn. So if you wanted to, you could just as easily say beat Georgia 38-7. Can you imagine what people would be talking about?
They would be clearly far ahead, number 1 over everybody, and there'd be no competition.
Right. There's no competition and no conversation whatsoever. Yeah. Where are they currently in the polls that are stupid and don't matter?
Like 3 and 4.
Third and fourth. Yep.
Yeah.
Sure.
So go figure on that one. That's the 3:30 game this week. Oh, Virginia Tech at Notre Dame. Nobody cares. The same with Miami and Florida State. They play this week.
Right. Yeah. Miami and Florida State. The interesting thing with the ACC, if you're not following the ACC football closely, and I don't know why you wouldn't be, there is still an outside chance that the ACC Coastal does what it is just constantly trying to do and has everyone finish 4-4 in the conference this year. Like it is plausible. You need, I think you need Georgia Tech and Miami to win this weekend, I think, or Georgia Tech and North Carolina to win this weekend. Those are kind of the big ones. But like it's entirely possible that whole division ends up in like a 4 or 5 way at least tie for the divisional title.
You mentioned big ones. Rutgers at Illinois.
We were talking about big ones, not the biggest one.
Oh, sorry. There are 2 big Pac-12 games this weekend, and I'll be watching those because you're talking about the 2 Pac-12 teams that are still alive in the playoff hunt. Utah is at Washington. That's the 4 p.m. Fox game. And Oregon is at USC. That's the 8 p.m. Fox game. And we could be without the Pac-12 after this weekend, which might almost lock a second SEC team into the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, with Oklahoma losing last weekend to Kansas State, that took one of those, definite going to, if you just keep winning, you're in. That took one of those teams out. Oregon just had that one goofy loss in week 1 to Auburn. And how different would the national landscape look if they had not? I mean, you think about how close Auburn came to not winning that game. And it
several times.
Took that last drive. There were like at least 3 or 4 plays that were, if they just get one stop here, that's it. And they couldn't do it. If Oregon loses and Utah loses, and those are both pretty good teams. I mean, the Pac-12 gets kind of dunked on just because they perpetually have, everyone has a loss or 2 by week 3 of the season. But Utah and Oregon are both teams that are, like, they're not amazing teams, but they're going to be a pain in the butt for someone if they make it into the playoff. But yeah, if the Pac-12, if Oregon loses, if Utah loses, then the Pac-12 is essentially out at that point, and you're relying on the Big 12, either Baylor or
you still see Oklahoma could still do it.
Yeah, but I mean, Oklahoma now has 1 loss, and they're going to have to play Baylor probably twice. and I think still have Oklahoma State left. And I mean, they are quite plausibly going to lose a second game. And at that point, it's just, Clemson and whoever comes out of the Big Ten, and then the SEC is automatically going to get 2 because, of course, as we've established, they play this murderous schedule.
Yeah, and the Pac-12, those two games, the lines are both under a touchdown, so they are pretty much toss-ups. And once you go on the road, you know how that goes. I wonder, what about a one-loss Baylor team? Say they lose the Big 12 championship to a...
They would have to lose to Oklahoma close in regulation and then beat Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship.
Because they don't really have any quality wins other than their in-conference stuff, which a lot like the Pac-12, where you beat a 7-5, 8-4 team. I mean that's what your conference is made up of.
Yeah,
just a bunch of 7-5 also rans.
Baylor is 7-0 right now, and I mean you've got West Virginia this week, which is definitely a possibility that they win that. At TCU, which TCU is definitely
Texas
beatable
just lost
this year.
there.
Yep, but then they finish. It's home for Oklahoma on the 16th of November, home for Texas on the 23rd of November, and then at Kansas is where they end, and then Big 12 championship game.
Les Miles is going to beat them. They're going to be 11-0 going to Kansas.
That would be the most Les Miles thing ever.
I tell you, I'm having fun in a little bit of opportunities I get to see Kansas play this year, just because they're not just lying dead. They're actually doing stuff, and it's kind of reminiscent of the mid 2000s when they were fun to watch and they were just creating havoc. And Les Miles, it's odd to see an offense that he has creating good havoc.
It's interesting because they fired their offensive coordinator just like a month into the season, and since then they darn near won at Texas 50-48, and then had the most Les Miles finish. I'm sure if you care enough about college football to be listening to us, you saw the finish of the Texas Tech Kansas game, but Texas Tech blocked what was potentially a game-winning field goal, and the player picked up the loose ball and then just tried to lateral it to no one. And so Kansas recovered the fumble and got a second chance, much closer, for a game-winning field goal, and kicked it and won 37-34.
I have my second TV on Roku, so I watch football streaming there, and I always thought I wouldn't like watching sports streaming because you're a minute and a half behind Twitter. But what it does allow you is when stuff like that happens, you can get to it in time to watch it. And so I got to watch that, and that's Les Miles. That's Big 12 football. That's Kansas this year, baby. That's excitement. Are you excited about SMU at Memphis?
That's actually kind of low-key going to be an exciting game. I enjoy the AAC quite a bit. It's honestly, it's probably a better league top to bottom this year than the ACC is. I mean, and I think SP Plus has at least one of I think it's the AAC West is a better division than the ACC Coastal.
Tell me who is in the AAC West.
Okay, so that's going to be SMU. That's going to be Tulsa. That's going to be Houston, Tulane. You're not even looking, so you don't know if I'm right or not.
Exactly. No,
Memphis should be in the West.
You're absolutely right. I am not looking. You said Memphis in the West?
I said Memphis is in the West, right. Yeah, because they played.
You're missing one team.
I am missing one team.
And it's the easternmost team, probably.
Oh, is Navy in the West?
Yes.
Yes, Navy. Yeah, that's like Missouri's in the SEC East.
Yes.
Yeah. I was going geographically and I'm thinking through teams, and it was like, no, those are all East teams. So.
But there's 3 ranked teams in the AAC right now. Memphis being 24th is the lowest ranked. SMU is 15. Cincinnati is 17. Ohio State beat Cincinnati earlier in the season. If you had forgotten that one, 42-0. So this is SMU at Memphis. Memphis is a 6-point favorite, and that's the game day game.
And I mean, that's if there's a week that there's nothing going on, absolutely go do that, because you can go do Florida, Georgia, and whatever. You're in the parking lot of an NFL stadium for a game between 2 teams that are fine but not amazing.
And they were in the Dakotas last week, so yeah. I'm going to assume they are going to be at Alabama next week.
I have to assume they're going to, which, I mean, it's just it's just not that interesting. Like, it's the same game as every year, and maybe this is the year that LSU comes to play, or maybe this is
they got Joe Burrow. Baby.
They do have Joe Burrow, and they also have Joe Brady, who's their offensive coordinator. Who this is a different LSU offense than they've had in previous years. Because every year it was just LSU's pretty good this year. Maybe this will be the year that they can beat. Nope, they got shut out again. It's so sad. So this is potentially like maybe this is really the year, like really this time. But yeah, the Minnesota Penn State game, just in terms of storylines, that's a much more interesting game, I think, than the 15th straight iteration of LSU Alabama.
Yeah, I know PJ Fleck wanted that. That'll be a noon ABC game. Penn State at Minnesota, up against Maryland, Ohio State on Fox, because nobody wants to be in that 3:30 window against LSU and Alabama, and nobody wants to play at night that late in the season, including Minnesota, who said, no, we don't want a night game, even at home.
Minnesota knows what the weather in Minnesota is like in early to mid. No, thank you.
All right, so Tom, you got anything else this weekend that you're looking forward to, or are we going to wrap up here?
I think we are pretty much set for the week, and the next time we talk to our wonderful listeners, it's going to be Maryland week.
Finally.
Yes!
Every week has led up to this. We have tried to limit how much we talk about Maryland so that we don't use up all of our Maryland hot takes for this 1 week. So I'm looking forward to it. And I can't wait. And what I like most is that the game is here.
The best part of a Maryland game is when you don't have to go to Maryland and drive through the woods of Pennsylvania at 2 a.m.
Gosh, it's so great. So, all right, thank you all for listening. Make sure to check out the rest of the shows on the Ozone Radio Network. That's the Buckeye Sloopcast on Mondays and Fridays, the Silver Bullets on Tuesdays, and we get you guys for this show like Tuesdays and Thursdays, what have you. We're breezy. So
you can't. If you say it totally negates the breezy.
Sorry, we're not breezy. Yes, we are. All right, we'll talk to you guys later.